Привіт, друзі.
Hello, Josebo.
Bonjour, and welcome to Planet of the Climates. POTK is a KlimaDAO podcast bringing you the latest information and insight into the world of climate action. Klima is a blockchain protocol backed by carbon credits that gives people a chance to fight climate change as a collective and get rewarded for doing so. Klima sits at the intersection of blockchain, climate science, and finance, so there's no shortage of great topics for us to explore together. My name's Phaedrus, and I'll be your host on this adventure. I'm joined by my good friends and co-hosts Reg and DiamondHands as we
Discuss the latest Klima news.
Drop some occasional alpha.
and connect you with the biggest and brightest names currently exploring this space. So today, Reg is unable to join us, unfortunately, but DiamondHands and I are excited to be chatting with Wassim from the global carbon commodity company SCB Group, who also happen to be one of our newest Klima Infinity partners. Let's just jump right into this chat. So, Wassim is a trader and portfolio manager with SCB, a leading global carbon commodity company. SCB also happens to be one of our newest Klima Infinity partners, so we'll undoubtedly take some time to unpack and learn more about just what SCB is all about and take a glimpse at the future of this incredible partnership. But first, why don't you let us know about you, Wassim? Can you tell us a little bit about your story, your background, and maybe your journey or experience with crypto too?
So I have an engineering background. So I studied energy, finance, and data analytics. My first job was in R&D. I worked in the design of solar panels that are integrated to the structural elements of the buildings. Then moved to strategy consulting in the field of the sector of energy and mobility. And after that, I stopped for almost like a year to develop a project in Morocco, in my origin country, and then came back to Switzerland and moved to the voluntary carbon market. So it was a super interesting market, and I'd see that it was boiling, and I joined the SCB. For my crypto experience, I've been around crypto since 2015, like really involved. So I was in a group of people in my uni who were very interested about blockchain in general. So I've been through few bull and bear markets. I'm not losing my mind now. So yeah, and an interesting thing is that with my colleague German, who was supposed to be here, but unfortunately we don't have him. From the day I started, so we almost started at the same time in the carbon desk, in the carbon trading desk at SCB. We had this first lunch together as colleagues, and one of the first subject that came into discussion was that like carbon credits need to be on blockchain. They lay themselves perfectly on the blockchain. Everything that the blockchain is made for and that it can enable and help is needed by the carbon market, basically, especially the voluntary carbon market. And then a bit of time later, we see Klima and Toucan happening. So that's it. Yeah, and for my work at SCB, I would say that. So I work as a carbon and EECs environmental trader. I also take care of with German crypto ReFi or partnerships, and I do a lot of data analytics for the desk. Take care also of the price modeling for all the carbon assets that we trade. That it's a commodity that is pretty scattered and the prices are very different. So yeah, that's what I do.
Well, excellent. Yeah, no, it's great to hear about your background and your journey there. And it sounds like, yeah, you're kind of an early adopter, I guess, for crypto and blockchain technology. And it's great to hear that, that vision of aligning with, carbon markets belong on chain as well, too, that was on your radar quite early as well. But why don't we just, back things up a little bit as well, too. We've talked about SCB, your group, just for our listeners who might not be, intimately familiar with the way like carbon credit trading works. You mentioned EACs. What is SCB's mission and kind of what are these activities? Who are your clients? And, what are some of the, major activities or milestones that you feel you've hit so far?
Yeah, so SCB has been working in the low carbon commodity markets for like now 15 years. So that makes us a bit a heritage business. We have mainly two tracks of business, I would say. that have some subsets inside each of them. So the first one I would say is assisting companies achieving net zero by substituting low carbon alternative commodities for high carbon commodities. To give an example, reducing the amount of gasoline fuel for cars and increasing the amount of ethanol, right? So that's one track business. The second one is helping companies basically achieve carbon neutrality or even going beyond carbon neutrality through carbon credits to offset or abate their residual emissions. So, in other words, we help companies assess their carbon emissions, set sustainability goals, and abate their residual emissions through carbon offsets that make sense in regard to their operations, for example, or to their whole environmental strategy. We're also getting more and more active on the upstream, the very upstream side of the carbon market. So we finance and co-develop highly additional and high quality carbon projects. I can give you a few examples. So we've funded and co-developed a solar power project on an adult literacy program. So basically, we're doing it with Build On, building 9 schools in Malawi. Some of our colleagues have went there and were in the ground and worked there for a moment. Today, we have more than 6,000 children and 700 adults benefit from the increased access to education that this program, these lights, these classes have provided. We're also financing the planting of 4 million trees in Himalayan region of northeast India. It's a region that has a risk of landslide. So these trees prevent the risk of landslide, and they also, due to remove more than 360,000 tons of CO2 from the atmosphere, improve biodiversity. And it's also a project that's brought a lot of support to the local communities and created jobs. So until this project is expected, to help 5,000 people to benefit directly from it, and indirectly we're talking about more than 16,000 households. And I would add, one of the projects that I really like is one of the projects that we've done in a Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh. So we are the sole provider of 100,000 smokeless cook stoves there. It's a device that really improves the health and the living conditions of people. And especially for the situation, the living conditions are really hard. So we are working in this project in partnership with Bangladesh Bondu Foundation. And we're also supported by the government of Bangladesh. And the distribution is started in April and is to be completed in February 2023.
Well, that's awesome. And I think, just for people hearing about, that you're a carbon trader, or you're working at a trading desk or at a brokerage or whatever, you would think that that's quite a technical and computational analytical sort of role, and obviously it is. But then you're describing that you really have this opportunity to really directly impact things on the ground with these very specific projects too. So that's got to feel good to be able to see that sort of impact from your work.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the carbon market. So it's still a market. We're still traders, right? We are doing a technical job, but we have an impact, and that's what makes our job so pleasant, because we have a daily impact on the planet, on communities, on biodiversity, and probably more and more people will apply for carbon trading roles now.
Yeah. I actually thought that, like carbon trading, it's like, like just like traders, like in the TradFi industries, like you have like multiple screens and just looking at numbers and figures, but you spend like the last 5 to 10 minutes sharing about how much you have impacted developing countries, building schools, benefiting kids, adults, planting trees. Making money is important, but really making an impact, I think that's the true value that a company can do, especially when it's like what we are doing right now with like carbon removal, right? We are kind of in the carbon removal business in the sense, right? And to really see a company like SCB to do this makes us hopefully inspired to be one day with you guys, rubbing shoulders to do the same thing as well, man.
That's very nice to hear, and I think we are all values aligned to make things happen, and to make the world a better place.
Yeah, that's great. I know we'll get back to those stories and that wonderful alignment there too. But perhaps a little bit more of a semi-technical question for you too, as a carbon trader. I'm curious, how do you see carbon credits playing? Like, what role do they play in the bigger picture of climate action? You obviously have a good connection to a spectrum of things on the ground versus the credits. So, I know a lot of people kind of perhaps question or are critical of the legitimacy and the impact of carbon credits. Some critics out there. What do you say to them about the impact and the benefit of these carbon credits?
What I can say is, there are these big programs such as, for example, CDM. CDM came under scrutiny by the UN investigation around 10 years ago and did identify room for improvement. We are always talking, how to improve this market and how to make it have an impact, right? So we have now major offset programs like Gold Standard or Vera that respond or try their best to respond to these concerns and put in place methodologies and methods to prevent overestimation of greenhouse gas, for example, and to reconsider the eligibility of projects, and they take action. Also, I would say that if someone wants to question the legitimacy of carbon trading or even carbon credits, we can see that the interest in carbon trading has have grown a lot after the COP26, when the UN decided to adopt a market-based solution allowing government to trade emissions. So I don't think we would see like massive involvement of all these bodies if it was not a legit solution or if it was not something that had impact. And on my side, being at the heart of the carbon credits ecosystem, I can see, as I described from the projects before, I can see that the nature-based projects, removal projects, the renewable energy projects, or if the community-based projects, in addition to their clear environmental impact, have also benefits in terms of biodiversity for the local communities and for the society. I can tell you, for example, that in some projects that we support, we have infrared cameras or satellites that are tracking land use, and we can see the return of wildlife. We can see the forest coverage growing and improving. We have also direct contact with communities on the avoidance projects that we develop, and we are able to see the impacts that these projects have on their lives and on their health on a daily basis. So that's what I say to these critics, right? And I also maintain something is to be very transparent. To fight climate change, it's a fight that needs to happen on several fronts, a lot of different fronts, and VCM is just one of them, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you did talk before. You used the word, residual emissions, and I guess kind of is that where the carbon credits really fit in and offsetting residual?
I would say that's where they have the biggest value, residual emissions, because that's some emissions that are uncompressible, or at least with the current technology and the current financially makes sense, but they have usage also on non-residual emissions, I would say. If they can help improve the overall climate situation, biodiversity, and communities, they have a role other than residual emissions. Don't know if you agree with me.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's great, and definitely, like, how cool is that to be able to use these technologies that you're saying, where you can literally, see the wildlife returning to an area as well too. That you're seeing these secondary and tertiary, cascading benefits from these projects as well too. That's incredible.
Exactly.
Just going back to this like carbon credits itself, right? There has been a lot of discussions about like high quality versus low quality. Like earlier on, you talked about Vera, you talked about gold standards. These are always like questions that has been always popping around, like high quality versus low quality. What's your thoughts on this kind of discussions?
Well, what's the definition of high quality and what's the definition of low quality? It's if we say, okay, a quality offset, maybe high quality would be removal activities. But for me, the most important is, first of all, additionality. It's very easy example is you can take, for example, a wind farm. A wind farm is very likely to be easily financed if it's accessible, if it's in a very stable environment or place. But projects that take place in difficult zone to access will be harder to get financing through traditional business channels. And that's where carbon credits make a difference. Carbon credit financing can make a difference. And I think that now, the verification of Verra and Gold Standard is becoming more strict. They will not, for example, verify renewable energy projects that are not in least developed countries. And I hear people saying that it's not doing enough to address climate change. And I think, as I said before, that climate change needs to be addressed by a lot of means. One of them is voluntary carbon market. And I believe that in order to address this climate crisis, we need to incrementally change the market and make higher quality credits, but that should be incremental, just like you guys have been doing with BCT, for example. So you want to make it more or higher quality, but you're doing in an incremental way. You don't want these big market moves or big discrepancies.
So you can't avoid so-called low quality carbon credits, but over time it will just balance off by itself, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I also want to say that this a lot of the quality talk is sometimes about perception. I don't know if you follow the videos of Elias. So he just posted a very interesting video on vintages. He said that the climate crisis or the rise in temperature in the planet is a perpetual auto-feeding circle. So let's say, for example, we take the North Pole. There is snow. It helps to cool the planet. It helps to reflect the energy, and that's how it cools the planet. If you take away a piece of, let's say, snow, there is some CO2 that will make the earth warmer. It will melt the snow. Then what you're gonna have below the snow is probably rocks or water, and that will absorb heat and make the ice melt faster, which will expose more rocks and therefore make the planet warmer and warmer and warmer, right? So one can argue and say that a carbon credits of 2001, if it was well monitored and if the project is legit, 1 ton of removal had actually way more impact than a ton of removal in 2021. And he also added that if it's a legit project that was built 10 years ago, let's say, or 5 years ago, you already know that within these 5 years, nothing happened with the project, no bad press, everything is legit there. While a project that you buy, let's say vintage of 2022, you don't know what's going to happen next. It's just, sometimes it's perception, I would say, or say, for example, waste credits, right? There is a lot of bad press around waste credits, but you can also see some people saying that they are highly additional because they basically in LDCs, they solve the waste problem. There is no reason, like there's no financial reason except the carbon credits that this waste is going to be removed and treated, because in some countries there is not that much budget, to help with this. So there is a big perception side to all of these quality problems. And I just wanted to share, other perceptions than just, waste, bad, reforestation, good.
Well, that's definitely a great counterpoint and great perspective on the quality question, on the vintage question there. Yeah, really appreciate that. You mentioned earlier too that, when you had joined SCB, or it was really on your radar quite early, that, the VCM kind of belongs on chain. So I'm curious, what are your views, or when did you first have these ideas around, blockchain's potential as a tool to really help address some of the challenges around the climate crisis?
When you start learning about, carbon credits, especially we are doing just the voluntary carbon market, right? So, the whole double counting risks, the delivery risks when you're a trader, for example, the lack of liquidity, the lack of transparency, especially at the very beginning of the carbon markets. And then you see what happened when blockchain met carbon and crypto met carbon. You have massive liquidity, transparency in prices, in projects, in wallets, like who is holding what, basically. So that makes easy access for the end users, either if they are, corporates or organizations that say they want to buy for 100 KT of offsets. Let's just not name any project or anything. They can monitor the price of any a BCT or NCT or any transparent pool. And whenever it's a good price for them, they can buy. The liquidity is so deep that it's not going to generate that much of a slippage. Individuals, the same thing. They have access. They know what's the underlying of the pool. So that's the on the end user, on the downstream of the market. That's how I see blockchain helping for the moment. And on more upstream, I would say like offset holders can sell or buy offsets very easily on chain with transactions fee that are close to zero, especially with the Matic price now. And then also project developers and project owners that can sell a part of their credits immediately on the blockchain and access liquidity to, pay back their operations and hopefully make some profit. I'm also referring to, the amazing tools that are created, thinking about, all the retirement tools, Klima Infinity, for example. Very sleek way to retire credits and understand, it's very easy, to grasp and understand what you're doing and what types of projects you're supporting and select even to the granularity of the project level. And I also like to add something that is very interesting about blockchain impact on climate and especially on the voluntary carbon. So project financing, basically what Solid World are planning to do. And I think also IV protocol. So this is, I think, was one of the missing parts on the blockchain. So you already have end users through Klima Infinity. You have that middle part of the market through the liquidity pools. And now you have like the very upstream of the market where people can invest in projects before they issue credits. That enables project developers to understand if there is a pool, they will understand at least where they are priced now and probably get some money to run their operations. That's the end goal. Because you have to understand that now a project developer or a project owner, they don't even know how much they're going to make for at least 1 year or sometimes even more. Or they might even end up like running no cash to build their project, and some projects just fail or they stop because they don't have enough financing. So I think that's the missing part, and I'm seeing also like some big brains working on this part, and I believe that they're going to do a wonderful job.
Oh, excellent. And I know we've kind of had, some conversations within Klima about, where some of that direct project financing or the upstream component might fit into Klima's future too. And, there's no doubt that our story has just started and that can be a part of where we go. So my question for you then too, just as a follow-up about, blockchain's potential, and obviously SCB is very tuned into that, but has SCB had to pivot, or how do you see, like, that's not competing or undermining or taking away business from SCB, or how do you, respond to this shift in the VCM being more on chain?
I don't see it at all as competing. So in big picture, I think for the transition to happen and for the common goals that I believe every legit player has, meaning make an impact, off-chain and on-chain need to work together, especially if their values aligned. So that's one part. And on the competition side, I don't see it as competition. I see it just as a new market. Yeah, and maybe an easier way for us to work because of the liquidity, because of the transparency. It's I would say that a player that don't know how to adapt is not keen about innovation would see it as competition. At SCB, we love innovative projects and we adapt very easily. So we're just very excited about what's happening.
Yeah. So speaking about working together, SCB is actually a Klima Infinity partner, but I think that our relationship goes a little bit deeper than that. So I'd like to ask, all right, for the benefit of the listeners, right, when did SCB and Klima first met, and what was SCB's role in Klima's launch?
That's an interesting one, and it made me think of some nice memories. So, as I mentioned at the very beginning, my colleague German and I are strong believers in blockchain. He's been around blockchain since probably 2013 or something like this. So we were always, having this discussion that carbon credits would have a better living in the blockchain and would enjoy themselves better. So when we saw that Carbon Pulse article about Klima and Toucan, I think they were both cited on the Carbon Pulse article, we reached out to some of the core team members. I remember having a chat with Archie, and then SCB were, as I told you, we are very supportive of innovation, and they have strongly, endorsed the initiative. At the very beginning, we supplied carbon credits to Klima. I think we were among the first ones, if not the first, to be confirmed with Archie or Dionysus. We then made a marketing campaign, the tree and the rocket. So on our website, we have dynamic videos, and we just threw a rocket and 2 trees beside the rocket and posted it on Twitter, and it went viral, like in the Discord at that time.
Oh, awesome.
So that shows our support, to the project and how keen we are to see, innovation going to make an impact on the planet, basically. And then we also bridged tons. We were in touch as well with Toucan. We gave them, market information and market insights so they can have better decision making on making their product. We also bridged tons. We played the game of the protocol. We bonded, staked, provided liquidity. We explored around, and yeah, that was like the very beginning of the relationship between Klima and SCB. And we also had like a kind of a strong Discord involvement where we could see like people getting interested, but they didn't know anything about the carbon market. Some of them were confused. They were seeing like BCT trading at 6, and they were like, wow, the price of the carbon markets off chain are 90, but they were seeing like EU ETS basically. And so we were giving like as much as we could some education on the Discord. We don't want to step on your work, guys. We were hanging there, and we have some market expertise, so we were explaining what's the market about to different people on Discord. Yeah, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's excellent. So obviously, you've been a key, climate and a key part of our community, that SCB has played that role since launch. Definitely incredible value that you're providing for our community here. What's the, low-hanging fruit perhaps that you're working on now? Obviously, your Klima Infinity partner. Are you helping others kind of understand what Klima Infinity does, or what are you working on in terms of that relationship with Klima right now?
We are working on, just basically help the space expand and get adoption by corporates and organizations. It's a bit tough, but it's not at all impossible when we are seeing more and more interest. So it's a lot of education to be done like on the corporate side. So we are also showing our support and our adoption of the solution by offsetting our own emissions through a part of our own emissions through Klima Infinity. So that's like one way to bring in demand, basically. And we will be working on other stuff that is in discussion. But yeah.
I'm just curious, right? When you speak about like education, right? Do you foresee that is there a need for constant education? Because like for myself, right, when I first entered Klima, understanding carbon markets was a total game changer for me. It was till today, I'm still learning about carbon markets. Do you think that it's good, to create something like an educational space or some form of library or for people to actually learn about it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like for everyone, I would say you guys are like integrating almost the whole market. So I would say you can like create educational materials. Let's start from the downstream. Educational materials for individuals, basically. Then for corporates, organizations, how it works, how offsets works, what are the benefits, why is it better on the blockchain. I think you've done a lot already, but it's always good to have. Basically, for people who own offsets and want to bridge them, also like how a liquidity pool work. I think that's like some stuff that we understand very easily because we've been in the space long enough. But remember your first time, trading on a sushi or something like this, you just you're super confused, right? So I would say that can definitely help.
Wow, cool. Definitely. I would love to see, I have a collaboration with you, to speak to our community, like maybe like a workshop or an AMA of sorts that they can really find out more about like carbon credits, like carbon credits 101 in that sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So I do have this question that we always ask all our guests, which is this question about 2033, which means let's take a look down the road 11 years from now, 2033, right? What are your thoughts in terms of the long-term vision in the next 11 years, right? Beyond Klima Infinity, what do you think this partnership will become, and like how SCB, will eventually work? Like what's the goal? In 2033, where do you see this partnership going, and how would SCB be working with Web3 as well as blockchain? in terms of the carbon market?
11 years is a bit far, man. But what I'm sure about is that we see a lot of added value of, Web3. I would say that ReFi was one of the biggest things that happened to the carbon market along with COP26. And we see the more amount of effort that is being put by a massive number of big brain people in this space. It's moving so fast. It's impressive. And I genuinely think that the goals in the transition can be reached by collaboration, like between the different on-chain Web3 ReFi players, right? And also between some value-aligned off-chain players. So that's like how we can achieve the complete transition and get to the common goals. And I would say that, yeah, SCB is seeing a lot of value on the blockchain and, leaking a bit of alpha, but not too much. I know that Archie as a main marketing tool is to leak alpha, right?
That was the question I'm going to ask next. Is there any alpha you can share with us? What's next for SCB? Do you see anything interesting that you can share with our listeners?
I would say, yeah.
Or is this the alpha now?
No, that's like a very, very regular one. Especially like it's more on the market side. We are trying to we see the impact of investing in projects basically and developing projects, and we are trying to increase our activities in this side of the business and invest in meaningful projects that have very good impact, that are additional, and that help the climate, but also help communities and biodiversity.
Wow, that's really I really love the vision you guys have at SCB. Like, this is something that I feel that it's very close to my heart, like personally, that end of the day, making money is important. Like we need money, right, to survive, to pay bills and stuff like that. But like ultimately making an impact in the world, a positive impact in the world, that really matters, and I really love that a lot.
I definitely agree with you. For me, a solution, like they say, environmental solution, to be adopted by people, it needs to make sense financially, right? Otherwise, it's not going to last forever. So we believe in the power of transactions to make impact happen, and I think you guys are aligned with this. With all the protocol, it's basically believing in transactions to solve the climate crisis.
Yeah, excellent.
Really, really thank you very much for taking out time to be with us today. I think both of us are really honored to have you here on the show to share with us so much more.
Thanks a lot, guys, for your time as well. I really enjoyed the podcast, and yeah, super happy to speak with you.
Thank you. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Well, that was definitely a great conversation. It was great to chat with Wassim and learn more about his work with SCB. I don't know about you, DiamondHands, but I really appreciated kind of getting the perspective from, the off-chain carbon markets as well, too. And, to understand that the on-chain development, the on-chain revolution that Klima has really helped spark is, not a threat to that industry for those who are, open-minded about it as well. And I also really appreciated his explanation. They're really focused on high quality carbon credits, and that distinction, that conversation that he had talking about the difference between high or low quality carbon credits, and that debate or that discussion is a little bit ill-placed or ill-advised as well too, that there's urgency to the climate crisis and we need all of the tools available to us right now to take meaningful, impactful action together. How about you, DiamondHands? What really stuck with you with that conversation with Wassim?
Yeah, I think what really struck with me, it's really where their value lies. It's not just about like quote unquote making money, but really making an impact. Something that really hit me, like build schools for Malawi, have more than 6,000 kids benefited from it, planting trees in India to prevent landslides. These are really amazing things that, I wouldn't expect, to be honest, a brokerage company to be doing this, like doing so much outreach program to really just have an impact, not just in the climate change but actual physical community outreach programs that really does impact on the ground. And hopefully, you know, as we grow as a community, as we grow as an organization, as a DAO, we are able to one day be able to do the same, you know, to not just impact worlds through the carbon market, but also through outreach programs like them.
Yeah, exactly. This on the ground, hands-on impact has got to feel like so good, and that's great to see that. And I'm sure we'll include some links in the show notes there too, because you've got to go check that out. These projects that SCB has been involved in are just very, very cool. You know, you're kind of alluding to that's someplace that Klima could go in terms of our growth and development as well too. So yeah, stay tuned on that front. But generally, for everything Klima, make sure you're hitting up KlimaDAO.finance, where you can stake bond. And of course, I think most importantly, find a link to the Klima Discord community. As a decentralized, autonomous organization, we are community-driven, just like this podcast. So join us, and you'll find a great group of Climates and plenty of opportunities to be an active Climate too. So we hope you really enjoyed this conversation with Wassim. Thank you so much for joining and hanging out with us, and we look forward to chatting once again on the very next Planet of the Climates.